When you think of Persepolis, you think especially of this huge artificial terrace on which stood sumptuous palaces, and upon which we still see the impressive proportions. The royal terrace demonstrates the excess of the Persian sovereigns. Over 1,500 feet long and 1,000 feet wide. Before reaching the palace, the visitor had to use that entry, flanked by two gigantic statues of bulls. The entrance had a very symbolic name, the Door of All Nations. Between the 6th and 4th centuries BC, the Persian Empire of Achaemenid dominates 23 nations, represented on the reliefs of the terrace. Here, two different peoples from Anatolia, the Ionians and the Lydians with their specific hairstyles. There are the Nubians, who came from today's Ethiopia. When in 522 BC, Darius the Great, the most famous king of the Achaemenid Empire, took power, his empire stretches from today's Libya to the banks of the Indus River. A vast territory which makes him one of the most powerful kings in the ancient world. Texts relate that to manifest the grandeur of his reign, he built Persepolis in the heart of these arid plateaus. He came here with his itinerant court during major seasonal ceremonies. Delegations from all the peoples of the empire come here to proclaim their allegiance to him in a procession loaded with gifts. Until now, archaeologists thought that Persepolis was therefore limited to a place of ceremony installed on the terrace and occupied only a few months in the year. Yet Diodorus Siculus, a Greek author, describes Persepolis as a veritable city, the richest of all Persia. Today, from the terrace, we see absolutely nothing of it, so where is it? Below, there are no elevations. No remaining vestiges of the Persian city are visible. Pierfrancesco Callieri has been digging at Persepolis for 8 years. He and his Iranian colleagues have identified the shortcomings in the models established by archaeologists who have studied this site since the 19th century. The royal terrace dominates its surroundings by several meters. What did they think existed below?
The first archaeologists who came here did not give much importance to places around the terrace. They showed no interest. I think that was because there was so much to excavate here. This area is enormous. The terrace measures 12 hectares.
But it interested you.
Yes, because it's like a big ship on the ocean. It's impossible for a ship to survive without supplies like food. So we must change the perspective. We must think that such a monumental terrace could only exist with a great support structure in the plain below the terrace.
If archaeologists can now support this hypothesis, it's thanks to a fundamental discovery. It was made in the 1930s in the terrace's fortifications. Ernst Herzfeld, a scientist from the University of Chicago, uncovers thousands of clay tablets dated from the reign of Darius. For the archaeologists, these tablets are carrying key information for understanding Persepolis. But there are so many that decades later, they are still not all decrypted. Today, some of them are being studied in Tehran at the National Museum of Iran. Shahrokh, and Wouter Henkelman are among the few researchers deciphering this treasure. What they were able to read on these tablets completely changes the vision we had of Persepolis. I see it's a wedge, but it's written in what language?
These are written in Elamite. Elamite was one of the administrative and official languages of the Persian Empire. So when it was discovered, originally people were very fascinated and they thought maybe they have found some political text from Persepolis from the time of Darius. But when they studied them, they realized that these are very important texts which are actually from behind scenes. They say something which usually are not told by the royal inscriptions and the kings. So they contain very important information.
Wouter, what is written on these tablets?
For example, this tablet talks about a priest who receives quantities of flour, and it's a significant amount, 360 liters of flour. The tablets are usually acts of a vast bureaucracy that distributes food. Flour, for example, to teams of workers, priests, men with official duties in Persepolis' economy. This archive talks about 10,000 workers, and that means that Persepolis is not just a ceremonial center used occasionally by the kings.
It's a real city.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks to the translations of these tablets, Pierfrancesco and his Iranian colleague Alireza Askari began their quest to discover the city of Persepolis and its tens of thousands of residents in the valley below the terrace.
The city we see over there certainly stretched across the plain all around us. We know that there was an administration. There were laborers, artisans. All these people lived permanently in the city. Persepolis was a royal city. The king received delegations from throughout the empire. He had to impress them with opulence. We must look for a city that's like no other city.
But where to start searching? Around the terrace, there are only fields and arid lands. The dwellings, the more modest workshops, were built of mud. They disappeared with time. To find this ghost town in such a landscape, Alireza and Pierfrancesco called in geophysicists. The Iranian Kurosh Muhammad Irani and the Frenchman Sébastien Gondet.
Seb, we've got something.
Thanks to this portable instrument, they measure the soil's magnetism. Geophysical survey is a method particularly suitable for a field such as this.
Yes, first, all human activities have the property to increase the magnetism of the soil, magnetism which we measure with geophysical exploration. With this method, we manage to do about 1 hectare per day, allowing us to map large areas. It's perfectly suited to a case like Persepolis. We know the city was probably spread out over several hundred hectares.
Kurosh and Sébastien completed this work by direct observation of the ground.
Look, concentrations of pottery.
Here too.
Here's an example, a piece of a big jar. And there. And here too.
These fragments have been dated to the Achaemenid period. Decades of plowing have brought them up to the surface. They're everywhere.
Yes.
But they've been moved by farming, so they're out of context.
In fact, on geophysical maps, we don't find a detailed plan of the buildings. That's why we also map concentrations of ceramics on the surface. And if we have a superposition of concentrations of ceramics and magnetic soil zones, that's when we can start to say, yes, there really was a permanent occupation here.
The two scientists were able to identify zones of occupation, certainly the old quarters of the city. Archaeologists then began excavating these areas. And soon, the first signs were brought up. Here, an oven. There, a neighborhood of artisans. Or even large buildings, perhaps aristocratic residences. Around the royal terrace, researchers began to see emerging the city desired by Darius, organized in specialized areas, some occupied by workers and craftsmen, others by officials and aristocrats who administered the region. But the excavations have also led to an unexpected conclusion. Persepolis was not a very dense city. Its different neighborhoods are widely spaced from each other. Between them, vast areas appear to have been deliberately left empty. Mapping it with their sensing device, geophysicists have identified traces of ancient furrows in the soil. What do they represent? To answer this question, Sebastian gave me an appointment 30 miles from Persepolis. At Pasargad, another royal city of the Achaemenid Empire. Hamid Fadai is the curator here. These canals are well preserved, like everywhere in Pasargad?
Yes, the part where we are covers 12 hectares, and its peculiarity is that it's covered with over a half-mile of stone canals. The engineering of these canal systems is incredible. Their shape, their slope, their magnificent architecture with stone basins and sections without any joints. This is very well planned.
Archaeologists have therefore understood that at Pasargad, this arid area, normally uncultivable, was equipped with an ingenious irrigation system on a large scale. So if I understand well, the arid landscape around us was green at the time?
Absolutely. Imagine gardens in which many species were planted. The kings were very fond of showing they could dominate the landscape by building and landscaping lush gardens. This is what Greek authors called a paradise, paradisos in Greek, and this term probably dates back to the Persian period.
A paradise?
A paradise. At Persepolis, we find this type of landscaping of parks to the west of the terrace.
And in Persepolis, it might be even larger.
Persepolis is based on the model of Pasargadi. They reproduced the model of Pasargadi, but on a much larger scale. And so these paradises, these parks, incorporated not only the palace, fields, and orchards, but also the common dwellings, the town.
The power of these Achaemenid kings is measured by their ability to create these earthly paradises in the desert. Open gardens to be viewed by all, to affirm their prestige. To achieve such a feat, it was still necessary to find water. Using satellite images, archaeologists have found traces of an amazing canal at Persepolis. In the valley, Sebastian has followed the route over several miles into the mountain of Seidan, which we go to visit.
We have good reason to believe that this source you see here was exploited by the Achaemenid kings to supply Persepolis.
It's a real technological feat. How many miles away are we?
We're 9 miles from the terrace of Persepolis, meaning they had to build a canal from these sources to the terrace. A channel that crossed the plain, reached the mountain of Persepolis, and continued to the terrace.
And this explains the water used to irrigate the gardens?
Exactly. To irrigate the parks, gardens, fields, and orchards. They needed a lot of water, so they came here. Why? Because this is good quality water. Other sources of the plain are often very salty. But here was great water for agriculture and also for human consumption of Persepolis' population.
So it's thanks to this pure water that King Darius was able to make Persepolis a Persian paradise. But what could this Eden have looked like? A few months ago, a team of Iranian and French scientists embarked on the track of the essences of the past by diving deep into the earth. These cores have imprisoned the memory of Persepolis' gardens. Morteza Jamali is able to interpret these time capsules. He's a palynologist specialized in pollen.
What we're observing is a section of a carrot from Lake Maarlu, not far from the palace of Persepolis. This period between 78 and 86 inches corresponds to the Achaemenid period, the period between 550 to 330 BC.
The Achaemenid period represents only a small part of this core sample that includes sediment accumulated over 4,000 years.
These sedimentary layers can trap pollen grains among other things, and pollen grains can reveal vegetation changes.
By observing these samples under the microscope, Morteza discovered that new pollens appeared in the region when the Achaemenids came to power.
Here is a platanus pollen. What's most remarkable is the appearance of cultivated trees. One can find 5 species of planted trees: walnut trees, planted for their fruit; olive trees, obviously planted for their oil; sycamore and cypress trees, often planted for shade in Persian gardens, but also pine trees.
Walnut, olive, pine, cypress, and sycamore. These species did not exist on Iran's high plateaus before the Achaemenids. They seem to have been imported from the 4 corners of their empire, and they managed to grow them on these arid lands, another way to express their power.
Observing a leap in pollen quantities from these trees, especially from items planted in the Persian gardens like cypress and walnut, shows the Achaemenids significantly landscaped the area. Here was something new. It may be the invention of garden cities or the large-scale development of gardens throughout the area.
Thanks to the work of archaeologists around the terrace and its palace, Persepolis, the Persian Eden, is revealed. A city with islands of housing spaced from each other and embedded in lush vegetation, with fruit trees, shade trees, and ponds. Persepolis must have been the most opulent city of the empire, the Persian paradise. This marvelous city was the work of Darius the Great. In any case, that's what history retained until now. But around the site, Pierfrancesco's team has made an unexpected discovery that could change the history of Persepolis. What exactly made you search here?
It was by chance, because our Palace in the City project led us to conduct surveys over the plain. When we started digging, we found a surprise. This is a monumental gate, which has a rectangular plane. It's very solid.
Brick walls, 32 feet thick, encircle a corridor with an inner chamber. What was this building's purpose? Finding the answer perplexed archaeologists. Until in searching, they discover these decorative elements. Some are decorated in reliefs, others are varnished. Alireza Askari, the co-director of the excavation, studies them as they emerge.
Look, that's an eye, a beautiful eye. We can see that it was painted with two different colors. And look, here's another engraved brick associated with it, and to which we attach great importance. This one. We believe this is part of a Babylonian dragon called Mushushu. Here is Mushushu's horn. And when we place this brick next to the other one, they become a part of Mushushu's head.
From these brick fragments, the researchers have reconstructed the animal. The Mushushu is a dragon with the front paws of a lion, the hind paws of a raptor, and a snake's head. A mythological animal originating in Babylon that archaeologists had never before found in Persia. Thus, in reconstituting this puzzle, they made the connection with Babylon's Ishtar Gate, which was one of the main entrances to the powerful Mesopotamian city located more than 600 miles away. Why reproduce this door at Persepolis? When does it date from? An inscription put them on the track.
This inscription in cuneiform is very important. It means king. But it's written in an ancient language that was no longer used at the time of Darius. This allows us to affirm that this Babylonian-style door was built before the arrival of Darius to power.
Thanks to the discovery of this gate, archaeologists have deduced that a city certainly existed here before the reign of Darius. Maybe founded by one of his predecessors, Cyrus, who 20 years earlier, in 539 BC, conquered Babylon. It was he who would have built this door to celebrate his victory. He would have founded Persepolis before Darius moved here with his palace and transforms the city into a Persian paradise. With these new findings, a completely new story of Persepolis is revealed, thanks to the work of these Iranian, Italian, and French archaeologists. How has your recent work changed the vision we had of Persepolis?
Now we've changed our perspective. The aim of the study was transferred to the outer city. We realized that we cannot understand the true Persepolis without a perspective of a city whose terrace is only one part. So we increased the limits of Persepolis much further, in both space and in time. This is an important part of Iranian culture that was born here during the reign of the Achaemenids. That is why for us Iranians, it is so important to understand the civilization that was built and thrived in this beautiful city of Persepolis.